So we are continuing our sermon series on Advent Oddities. We look at our story from Isaiah. We are digging into different texts from Isaiah. We're digging into the Word to see that sense of expectation and grace. And so we want to live into those realities. We want to see who we are. And just a reminder of the verses that we began our service with today. We started with Psalm 146. And the contemporary English version, I think is the one that I used here, says, "Happy are those whose help is in the God of Jacob." Some would say blessed. Some would say joyful. Some would use other terms that would indicate what that relationship is that we have with God according to the Psalms. Happy are those whose help is in the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord our God. This is the God who made the heavens and made the earth, made the seas and all that is within them, who keeps steadfast faith with us forever, who executes justice for those who are oppressed, who gives food to the hungry. The Lord sets the prisoners free. The Lord opens the eyes of the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down. The Lord loves the righteous. The Lord watches over the strangers. He upholds the orphan and the widow, but the way of the wicked He brings to ruin. So we enter into our sermon time again with a reminder that this is the God that we worship. The God of justice and hope, the God of creation power. And even deeper than that now, after the psalmists, we live in a place of resurrection hope, of Advent hope, of the second coming hope, of the return of Jesus, of the establishment of the kingdom. We live in that hope, and it is there that we find joy and happiness. And happy are those whose help is in the God of Jacob. And we long to live that out. Now, normally, I would be resistant to the concept of using the word happy from a scripture text. It's not my favorite translation of the word blessed, of the word that is describing that reality of our connection, because there are many times where we are not happy. There's a difference between happiness and joy. But on a Sunday that we talk about joy, I thought that word happy is a good place to begin where we are. Because we live into this reality of invitation to be in relationship with Jesus, to be in relationship with the Creator God, where all of that sense of justice and hope can prevail. And we long to live into that. And it's an invitation. It's an invitation to live into the reality of God's love and grace for you. And to live into that happiness. Are we always happy, even when we're in Jesus? No. But does God give us hope and love and joy and peace and goodness? Are we possibly set free from the realities that are before us? I hope so. I hope we can experience that. I long to experience that. I long to preach that and to see that return to me as I send that out to you, and you then respond with your eyes and your body language and all of that other things that say, yes, what you are preaching is true. Now, we are not the kind of congregation usually that you preach something and you get the amens, or you get the preach-its, or the responsive kind of preaching like that. But my hope is that as I preach, and I am watching you while I preach, I see when you yawn. I see when you look the other way. I see when you've got your phone out. I see that. Or I see when your eyes and your mind and your body are engaging the Scriptures and engaging what I'm saying and engaging in that. And so as I preach that, part of the way that we respond in that is to live that. And I always hope that what I'm preaching is a reality for you. And so if I preach on a text that says, happy are those whose hope is in God, joyful are those, I long to see that joy responded, those nods that say yes, and the sense that we go. But then there's more that we dig in and we say, okay, but how is that not just moving us joy, but deeper into Jesus, deeper into mission, deeper into the realities of the kingdom, deeper into the now and the not yet of kingdom life? How do we travel that highway that we're going to look at that says this is the way that we are headed? How do we see those things happening? I long to see more. I long to see a deeper response, a broader spread of the gospel, a reality of that seeping into the world. How do we invest in people that begins to bring that sense of hope and joy? But there's some important words from James that can help us live into this. We know it's coming. We know it's there. We know the promises are real. It says, be patient. Be patient, therefore, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. As the Father waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains, you also must be patient. But you must strengthen your hearts, because the coming of the Lord is near. And that gives us joy and hope. So there's that encouragement to patience and to strengthening. And there's a reason that sense of crop and the yielding is used so often in Scripture. Because as it is watered, as it is nurtured, as it is lived out, we see growth in ways that go beyond our imagination. Okay, let me do an illustration. Move off of that, that boom, boom, boom firing right here. Let's do an illustration. I bought my house here about 18 years ago, right? This is not my house, by the way, but it reminded me of a part of that. If you look out into my backyard when we moved there. Or my front lawn when we were shopping. If Don was here, he could tell you. The grass was up to here. The everything was overgrown in our backyard. And so I didn't have quite that fence there, but you can see that sense of overgrown in the picture. I mean, to the point that we looked out into our backyard and we saw kind of a row of trees at the end. And as we went outside, I remember Lori and Don and I standing there, and Lori goes back to the trees, and it looked like it was just into the woods or something, but we knew there were houses right behind us. And she moves the branches back, and she says, "There's a shed in here." It was so overgrown, we couldn't even see the shed. We're like, "What?" And then, "Yeah, there's two." What? There were two sheds in this place. Everything had overgrown in that sense of reality of what, it was alive. I'm like, okay, well, at least the soil's good here. Maybe we can do something. There was a branch that came over from our neighbor's yard, a crabapple tree, and it came out and over our fence, down, and it hit the ground, and then it started to grow back up and into our magnolia tree. That's how everything was growing like that and crazy. Front yard, backyard, all of that. And I remember then as we start working on it and we start the garden, and the gardens are very important to the Bruns family side of things. And so they're working on the yard right away, and they're wanting all these flowers and perennials and all of this stuff going. And I remember saying to my father-in-law, I said, Jim, how long will it take for us to move from the place of overgrown craziness to people looking at our yard and saying, that looks really nice? And he wouldn't answer. And I'll just tell you, 18 years it's not enough time to make that happen. I mean, I think we've done a nice job with planting flowers and bushes and blueberries and raspberries and all of those things, but I still look out of my front yard and I see that it's just, I feel like it's overgrown. We've planted the blueberries too close to the fence and too close to the climbing, or the hydrangea that's spreading all along the fence. We've blocking sun from all these other things. It just seems like there's that overgrowing sense of things, that wildness, that untamed sense of nature. And then there's the weeds and the horsetail and all those other things that pop up in different places. But sometimes that overgrowth is a reality that is hard to deal with. But it's not always that case. In fact, often, Scriptures use that other way of talking about things. Sometimes our life overpowers us. It becomes so wild that we can't deal with everything that is going on. You know why? It's not necessarily our faith that's keeping us there, but it's all of our other things overgrowing and choking out the reality. That's part of the reality of living in a wet part of the world. Now, the Scriptures, they talk a lot about harvest and soil and all of that, but they didn't come from a land of plenty. They came from a land of difficult, hard farming, of desert-like conditions, of struggle and pain and lack of water and all of those things. And so the sense of moving towards that growing and spreading and life-giving sense is often used. And Isaiah uses that in his sense of describing what it's going to be like when the people of God are redeemed and ransomed and set free and returned to their land and things are set to right. He uses that sense of blossoming and growing. And it's because it's odd, right? It's odd that you would use flowering and blooming really often in the desert. But that's what they were feeling. Remember, they've been at least under threat of being wiped out by the Assyrian army. By the time we get to where we are now in our text, there's assumption that it's many years later, and now they've been in exile for a while, and there's the dream of returning from exile, the promise of returning from being carted away from their land to being allowed to travel back to their land and bloom in place. They're living in the desert, and they're struggling. And so Isaiah uses these oddities to explain the difference of what is longed for and what is hoped for. And so let's turn to Isaiah 35. This is our main text today. Isaiah 35, and it's verses 1 through 10. I'm using I guess I'm using the Contemporary English Version here. Yeah, I am. Okay. And it says, thirsty deserts will be glad. Barren lands will celebrate and blossom with flowers. Deserts will bloom everywhere and sing joyful songs. They will be as majestic as Mount Lebanon, as glorious as Mount Carmel or Sharon Valley. Everyone will see the wonderful splendor of the Lord our God. Now you have to understand these people who are struggling with desert life and struggling with exile life are hearing the prophet Isaiah saying, hang on, the good stuff's coming. Hang on, we're ready for something amazing. The bloom is coming. He has a message for all who are weak, who are trembling, who are worried. Cheer up. Don't be afraid. Your God is coming. Right? James said that there's joy because the Lord is near. Right? This is this ongoing sense of what's going to happen as God enters into our lives and into our being. God is coming, is going to punish your enemies, will take revenge on them, and rescue you and redeem you. So again, they're in exile, and they're ready for this. The blind will see, and the ears of the deaf will be healed. Those who were lame will leap around like deer. Talk about oddities. You see someone who is broken or in a wheelchair or struggling to walk or move, and then in this sort of odd way of Jesus coming in and setting everything to right, the lame will leap around like the deer. Tongues that were once silent will shout for joy. Water will rush through the desert. Scorching sand will turn to a lake, and thirsty ground will flow with fountains. Grass will grow in deserts where packs of wild dogs once made their home. This place of barrenness is going to become like my backyard, overwhelmingly full of life. And it won't be a struggle. We won't be out there weeding in this, because it'll be a wonderful life. And so then we see it continues. That sense of a highway, a sense of traveling, a pathway into the future. Remember John the Baptist was the one who came to create that highway, to level the plains, all of that, to help see, to prepare the way for Jesus to come. And this is, again, that language. This is where this comes from. A good road will be there, and it'll be named God's sacred highway. It will be for God's people, and no one unfit to worship God will walk on that road. Why are they using that language? You know why? Remember now, I've said this is later in the story of Israel. They're not waiting to be conquered. They've already been conquered. They've been in exile. They've been dragged off to the land, and they are waiting again to return to the promised land, to the land that they called their own, to their home. And so Isaiah is using this language to say, this is coming. This highway back. You will travel back to where you will prosper and bloom. And none of these other enemies, none of them will be there. Because you will be guided and brought back. No fools can travel on that highway. No lions or other wild animals will come near that road. Only those whom the Lord has saved will travel there. The people of the Lord has rescued will come back singing as they enter Zion. Happiness will be a crown. Everyone will always wear. They will celebrate and shout because all sorrows and worries will be gone far away. Exciting? Inviting? Odd? Does it sit different even today? Does it sit differently than it would otherwise as we wonder what's next? Do we long for that same kind of thing? We might not be wanting to get on the highway. There's too much construction on Fraser Highway. That's not what he's talking about. That could take forever. It's that sense of how are we going to be able to live in the reality of God's promises, and we hold on to this. And so we look and we say, what is this saying to us? What is this inviting us to? And we can look and we can see, remember that there's that sense of barrenness, of dryness, of desert. I mean, this is the area around Israel, around Judah, that they look out, and this is the kind of land that they're living in. This is the land that they're going to be traveling in. This is the land that is being promised to blossom and bloom. And so they have great hope. Remember, thirsty deserts. Thirsty deserts, what's going to happen? Those thirsty deserts will be glad, and the barren lands will celebrate and blossom with flowers. Deserts will bloom. You see that in there, right? That's that kind of promise, that idea that something beautiful is coming, that there's that flower, that cacti, that whatever that will all of a sudden bring to bloom. Sharon has some wonderful pictures. She gets to go down to live in the desert in a month, right? That's the plan? Yeah, and she lives out on the desert, and she knows that when it rains, all of a sudden the desert can be full of flowers. And she has some great pictures of those blooms popping up. And this is the kind of promise that Isaiah is talking about. They had seen that, and they're longing for that in their lives, and that kind of bloom. And so we continue. We move into a deeper idea of what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're going to live it. And then how do you do that? Well, he says this, CEV, we'll use it here again. He has a message for all who are weak, trembling, and worried. Cheer up. Don't be afraid. Your God is coming to punish your enemies. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. I actually don't like this translation of this verse because it says... it doesn't give that same kind of direction, and there's actually a command in here. And so if you look at the NRSV or the NIV, but this is the NRSV, this is the command that is given that for some reason is missing in the CEV. It says, strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. If we're going to live in that kind of promise, then that's what we're told to do. Because the Lord is near, the Lord is coming. We help others get ready for that. And we walk alongside those who are struggling. When Jesus was told that John was doubting whether or not he was really the Messiah, he said, you know what? Look, I'm healing people, I'm teaching people, I'm setting them free, all of that. Believe and live and prosper. Isaiah says, so you who hear this message, say to those who are of a fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. Not just, it's coming. He's going to come with vengeance. He's also here, and he's going to come with terrible recompense. He will come, and he will save you. That we are commanded that if we're going to live in this now and this not yet, we have to believe, we have to look, we have to proclaim, we have to come alongside others and carry them in. We should be that Advent oddity. We should be something that people look at and say, you're different. You're not just looking out for yourself. You're hanging out with the lame and the blind, and you're helping them to see. You're helping them to live into something different. We, the people of God, are people who hope in the face of hopelessness. We have joy in the face of joylessness. We have life in the midst of a culture that's addicted to death. And we have strength in a world that will only play on every little weakness that you have. And we say, let's look to God. That it might not look pretty now. It might be a desert right now. But God's coming. And it's going to bloom. Now, Gene Tucker says in his work about this sense of redemption, this salvation, this ransom that that God is saying here in this Isaiah passage, it's both physical, right? They're going to travel back to Israel. It's both physical and spiritual. Moreover, about one point, there can be no doubt. The people of God will not redeem or ransom themselves. In this text, redemption and ransom are affected by God and God alone. Through divine action, the people of God become the redeemed of God, and that transforms their lives in every way. So as we enter into the redemption and the salvation offered by Jesus, as we wait for that to come true for the rest of the world, we enter that knowing that Jesus and God have provided this pathway for us and has transformed our lives so that we can go out and share that with others. Will we still be plagued by anxieties and fears and worries and sins and struggles? Sure. But as the more we lean into God and His community and Jesus, we begin to thrive and bloom in place in the midst of these deserts. Now, some people have begun to use terminology that is different for this world that we live in. David Kinnaman has a book, Faith in Exile, and he talks about how we are now in sort of an exile sort of land. We don't have that support of the world around us lifting up our faith. We can butt up against the world that says, no, that is not what you are allowed to do. You need to do something else. We live in a world that plagues us in different ways. We face an empire that is overwhelming. And he says in that book, he talks about empires subjugating weaker nations on earth using a variety of tactics, not all of which were military. He says, yes, empires use violence and power to achieve dominance, but military means often go hand in hand with colonial strategies deployed to transform the language, economics, and cultural imagination of conquered people. They want us to feel like we're in the desert. They want us to be a part of this empire, world, craziness all around us. And social media and the internet and streaming everything instantaneously from your phone or your TV or all of that, as wonderful as it can be, plagues us in different ways. And we have to figure out how we can be disciples in that journey. And Kinnaman and Matlock say this. He says, we propose that the goal of discipleship today is to develop Jesus followers who are resiliently faithful in the face of cultural coercion and who live a vibrant life in the Spirit. That's the invitation. Resiliently faithful in the face of the desert that is all around us, that pulls us into different things. And he goes on to say that in the realm of faith, resilient disciples grow more like Jesus. Not in spite of, but because of their locations in a society that exerts enormous coercive power. We begin to face against that, stand against that, say the joy of the Lord is our strength. The hope carries us somewhere else. And because we can get past the struggles of the world, the now, and live into the promise of the not yet, we begin to be faithful disciples because of that. And he talked about a vibrant life of the Spirit. Jesus-centered, culture-countering people adopt a way of life that is obviously different from the powerful norms of go with the flow in the screen age place. We have to begin to dig in and find a different way of being that gives glory to God. We light the candles here because it's a way of entering the story of hope and peace and life and making them present in our world today. But you are an Advent people who are meant to go out and be the candles for the world, to give that sense of hope and life and joy and a blooming desert all around. So how do we do that? How do we live into that reality? Well, we work at it. We hope in it. We trust in it. And like James said, we're patient, brothers and sisters, until Jesus fully comes. But like the farmer is waiting for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains, you also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. And what did Isaiah say that we're supposed to do? We're supposed to strengthen others. What did Jesus say was his proclamation of the truth and the reality is that he went out and he was setting people free. He was helping blind people who can't see the beauty of what's being offered, the beauty of the creation, the beauty of this world, and he sets them free to live in that. And the ones who can't walk in the Spirit are empowered to walk in the Spirit and the love and the life and the meaning. That we live in a world that is somewhat in exile, but we have hope, and we're following that highway, and we're watching the desert bloom, and we are being strengthened, and we are strengthening. We are being given hope, and we are being hope for the world. We are joyful people who can bring joy into our situations. We are people who have encountered Jesus, and then what do? We bring Jesus to the world, and we show that the world will not take our language, will not take our way of being, it will not take our hope or our joy, it will not snuff it out, because we are Advent people. And we're odd, but that's good. God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks for that invitation to be an oddity in this world. We give you thanks for the opportunity to bring joy and hope and peace to this world. We thank you that you are present, and we thank you that you're coming. Help us to live into that kingdom reality, that Advent reality.